let's do a little history review of what we've been learning, because we've been learning a lot of names and a lot of places, and we're going to continue to learn a lot of names, but we'll try to make it easy, and the more we practice, the more we'll get familiar. So this is probably one that you're very familiar with, but Columbus, who was actually Italian, but he sailed for Spain. And remember, Columbus went to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, and he said, if I travel west, I should be able to get to India instead of, remember Marco Polo? He traveled east and went to China. But Columbus said, I could probably go west and sail, and that's how I'll reach. So when he reached new land, do you remember what Columbus, where he thought he was? He thought that he had reached India, but really he had landed in San Salvador, which is completely off track. And then we learned about a man named Leif Erikson, and do you remember who he was? He was a Viking, that they're from way up north in Scandinavia, and they would conquer different lands, and they had conquered Iceland and Greenland, and so on a trip they got off track and they missed and discovered Northern America, and so he went and explored America, but unfortunately they were not able to have a settlement there. And then John Cabot was from England. Do you remember what he did? Okay, he was a map maker, and since he studied maps, he thought that Columbus had gone too far south, and he thought, if we go more north, we should be able to reach the New World, or to go around and to go to India. And so, he landed, and he was the first Englishman to go to North America, and so he claimed North America for England. Okay, so he probably landed in Canada, but he claimed that land for England. And then we see that there was a man who also wanted to travel to the New World, okay, except when he got there, Amerigo Vespucci, when he got there, he thought, you know what, this is not India. This has to be a new world. So he called the new discovered land the New World. So that's why it's named after him, because he's the one that claimed that it was the New World. Okay, so turn in your books to page 12. We're kind of going to just summarize it, and then you can go back and read it. But I'm just going to go through it kind of quickly and just go over some names and some main parts, and then we'll answer some questions, and then you do have an open book quiz to take, and then actually tomorrow is when we'll do some skill sheets. So on page 12 we start off with, did anyone ever really find a sea route to the Indies? Well, the one country that we've mentioned before, okay, let me find it. Okay, so a lot of action is starting from over in Europe here. Okay, so we have Spain, and then we have this little country next to Spain called Portugal. Okay, so Spain was very interested in the New World. They were sending all kinds of sailors to discover the New World and to try to get gold and things like that. Well, Portugal thought kind of in the opposite direction. They thought they could get to the India, by sailing around Africa and coming up. So that was kind of their interest, was to go around Africa. And so there was a Portuguese man by the name of Vasco da Gama. Okay, and he decided to do just that. He sailed below Africa and went to India, and he got many treasures, lots of gold and spices, and so he made his way back to Portugal and opened up the way for for people to sail down below Africa. Okay, so he sailed around Africa to get to India. So people are trying all different ways. Marco Polo went east over the land, and Christopher Columbus tried to go west. And then Vasco da Gama, he's trying to go south and go to around Africa. So, and then we'll see that there is another man by the name of Vasco but he has a different last name, Balboa. Okay, so Vasco de Balboa. And what he wanted to do, now he was from Spain. Vasco da Gama was from Portugal. But Vasco de Balboa was Spanish, from Spain. And so he was interested in the New World. And when he got there, he found the Indians that were there, but he treated them very kindly, and he became friends with them. And so the Indians became friends and were telling Balboa all kinds of things about the New World. And so they wanted to show Balboa that there was a great big ocean on the other side of the land. And so they traveled for many days, and which we would now know as Panama, which actually is right here. Okay, so they're gonna walk through this land and see the ocean on this side. And so when they got up on close to it, they climbed to this very tall mountain. And from there, Balboa could see the big, great ocean on the other side, and he called it the Great South Sea, which we know as the Pacific Ocean. It took 4 more days for them to get to that water, because they still had to travel through the jungle and all kinds of things. And so eventually they had their feet in the water, and so Balboa claimed that water for Spain. Okay, and so he named the Pacific Ocean the Great South Sea. Now they still haven't gotten a ship through the Americas. They've tried to go north, they've tried south, okay? So they still haven't found a place to go through. All right, well, there was another explorer, okay? Now this man was named Ponce de Leon, and he was from Spain as well. Okay, so this is on page 13. And as far as we know, he is the first European to reach what is now the United States. So he, let's see, he actually sailed with Columbus on the second voyage, and he wanted to explore for himself. So while he was exploring, the Indians that were there, the Native Americans, said that there was an island named Bimini, and on that island there was this fountain of water that if you drank it, you actually became younger, and you didn't look so old as you did. And so of course they wanted to have this water, so they went with the Native Americans, and they found a land, and it had beautiful flowers, but it ended up not being an island. Do you know what it ended up being? It was a peninsula, which is kind of close to an island. It's surrounded by 3 sides of water, but then that 4th side is connected to the land, so it's not an island. It would be called a peninsula. So actually, Ponce de Leon discovered Florida, and he named it Florida because of its flowers, which is Spanish for flowers. And so then, let's see, he found, while he was in Florida, there were some unfriendly Indians, and so he decided to go back to Puerto Rico, where he had originally landed when he came over. And then he tried to make a settlement in Florida again, but those Indians, and they probably rightfully thought it was their land, but unfortunately that's how you conquer, you take over. And so those Indians pretty much destroyed Ponce de Leon's army, and so they had to retreat. And so Ponce de Leon went to Cuba, because he had an injury, and so he actually died there. But we remember him as naming Florida. All right, let's answer the questions on page 15 real quickly. All right, what is a continent? That is a large mass of land. What are the 7 continents? Ready? Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, North America, South America, Antarctica. So there's 4 A's, and then the other 3 have different letters. What is history? That is the story of what has happened in the life of a country or a people. What is the study of the surface of the earth called? Just the surface. That is geography. What continent is responsible for the settlement of America? Remember, I keep saying that's where a lot of the action started? That's the continent of Europe. What are the 4 oceans? We have the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean, and the Arctic Ocean. What was Columbus searching for when he found America? He was searching for a short sea route to Asia. Who told Europeans about his journey to China? Remember, that was Marco Polo, who traveled across Asia to get to China. Name Columbus's 3 ships. We have the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. What happened on October 12th, 1492? Columbus discovered America. Where did Columbus land? Remember where he landed? San Salvador. What did Columbus call the people he met in America? He called them Indians. What group from Scandinavia were the first Europeans to visit America? Those were the Vikings, but they don't have credit for discovering it because they did not establish a settlement. When did the Vikings land in America? Approximately AD 1000. What did the Vikings call America? Remember all the grapes they found? They called it Vinland. What did John Cabot claim for England in 1497? That would be North America. What did the name America first stand for? Well, it first stood for South America, because that's really all that had been discovered. What Portuguese explorer first sailed around Africa to get to Asia? Do you remember who that was? That was Vasco da Gama. He sailed around Africa. Who was the first Spaniard to reach the Pacific Ocean? That was Balboa. Remember, he became friends with the Indians, and they showed him through where the ocean was. What did he name the Pacific? He named it the Great South Sea. What explorer wanted to find the Fountain of Youth? That was Ponce de Leon. And what land did he explore? He explored Florida. All right, so that is chapter 1. That's how it all started. Okay, now on page 16, okay, so we have a timeline there. And so the end of the 1400s, Columbus discovered the New World, even though he didn't know it. And so now we're bumped up to the 1500s. Now, this is going to we're going to talk about the conquest of Mexico. So in Mexico, there were Indians, and they were called the Aztecs, and they were very wealthy. They had lots of gold, lots of riches, and their ruler, his name was Montezuma. Can you say that? Montezuma. And so they, like I said, were very wealthy, and so they became famous for their wealth. So there came along someone who wanted to take over and get all that wealth for himself. So Hernando Cortez set out to conquer Mexico, and he wanted to win it by force. So he wanted to have a battle and win it. So he took lots of ships and soldiers, cannons, horses, and you wouldn't believe it, but when he got there, he told them to sink all the ships but one, and that one ship left over was to sail back. And so all his men knew that they had to win this, or they were going to be dead meat. So when they reached the Aztec city, and Montezuma, the ruler, saw these men, they had never seen white men before. They thought that perhaps they were gods. And so they brought all this gold and wealth and gave it to Cortez, but he was not satisfied. He wanted more. He wanted to conquer the whole land. And so he, for many years, fought, and finally he became the ruler of Mexico. Okay, so he actually claimed it for Spain. Cortez did. So, which made Spain a very wealthy country. Was the wealthiest country at that time. So they sent people to Mexico, and they spent missionaries to try to teach them different Catholic views, but there were good and there were bad men, and so a lot of it is sad what happened. All right, so we have another country and one more man we're going to talk about, and his name was Cartier. He was from France. All right, and he wanted to explore the New World as well. So what he did was he hoped to find a waterway through America that he could go through as a passageway to get to the Indies. And so he traveled there, and of course we can see on a map that there is no way. Okay, from here all the way down, there is no way through America. So you either have to come all the way down here, okay, or way up north. But he didn't know that. So he ended up finding an island, Newfoundland, and he discovered a very great river, and he thought maybe the river cut through, the St. Lawrence River, but it didn't. But while he was there, he did claim that area for France, where he was from. And so he made friends with the Indians there also, and he traded with them. He didn't try to conquer them. He traded with them and established 3 things that he did. Okay, so he opened a way for valuable fur trade between the French and the Indians. And he made a lasting and valuable friendship between the French and the Indians. And the most important thing was that Cartier's explorations gave France a claim to part of the New World. Okay, so now France has some of that New World. So we've got Spain has some, and Portugal has some, and England has some, and now France has some. So they're all starting to get little pieces of that New World. All right, that's what we'll do today. And I would suggest going back and just reading it and just glance over it and try to get some of that information in your head. Hey, 4th grade, I forgot to sneak in my surprise question. So if you watch this video, then I want you to email me and tell me what your favorite Christmas present was.